It is the Everton Byline, episode number 62. I am Matt Jones. Joining me as ever is Paddy Boyland, and we are here to reflect on a brilliant day at Hill Dickinson Stadium as Everton beat 19-game unbeaten Crystal Palace 2-1, deep into injury time. Loads and loads of good stuff to get stuck into. Paddy, how are you feeling after what was an eventful day on Sunday?
Yeah, it was great, wasn't it? Really, really good. Felt like the first proper moment for the stadium. First big kind of last-minute winner. Echoes of Goodison probably in the reaction, particularly from the South Stand, but not only from the South Stand. And even for us in the press box, being right up at the very back of the West Stand, kind of mirrored what we would have had from those immediately in front of us and what would have been the director's box at Goodison, where kind of people were singing and dancing and hugging each other after a really kind of big, important, I felt, comeback win for Everton. So yeah, doing really well, thanks.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. I'm still buzzing off it. Been buzzing all day. So we're going to talk about it loads. But yeah, the usual housekeeping to start off. We are sponsored by the Bridewell, obviously. Also partners with the Denby Castle and Pen Factory as well. Denby was great yesterday after the game. Loads of people enjoying themselves. Great to see so many people around. Great to hear all the positive feedback about the show. Obviously, this one I'm from the Blue Room, so thank you for that. If you watch us on YouTube or on Spotify now as well, you can watch us on Spotify, Paddy, which is very exciting. Do leave us a rating, do leave us a review on YouTube. If you're watching us or listening to us on Spotify, you can leave us a rating and a comment as well. And just a reminder as well, we've had a few people commenting about adverts recently and stuff like that. If you want to listen to all our stuff here on the Blue Room ad-free, you can sign up to the Blue Room Extra. We're putting all the podcasts out as well. So I'll put the link if you'd like to get involved and do that. We can get all the content ad-free and a few extra bits and pieces a month as well. You can do that. So yeah, I'll put the link in that for the description if you're watching on YouTube or in the description on Apple or Spotify or wherever you're listening. If you want to get in touch with us about anything as well, any longer form stuff, it's evertonbyline@gmail.com. Have you got any questions for us next week? Obviously, it's the international break, so we typically take questions from our listeners and viewers. So if you've got anything you want myself or more likely Paddy to answer, it's evertonbyline@gmail.com. Right, let's start, Paddy, with the very end. Well, I say the very end. There's still another 9 minutes played, wasn't there, after Everton actually scored, which was mad. But 93rd minute, Everton get the goal to go ahead against Crystal Palace. It's an amazing moment, and we sort of spoke about it a little bit on post-match yesterday. But I just kind of want you to take me through your sort of sensations and how it looked and how it felt. Obviously, you said there at the start, it was the first kind of big moments, the first Goodison-ish moments for the Hill Dickinson Stadium. What was it like to experience from up in the gods in the press box?
Yeah, I mean, pretty similar to you guys, I'd imagine. The only difference is you all get to celebrate, and I sit there in complete silence without flinching at all, which is even now.
Must have been a little fist pump under the desk or like a little sort of gut in when that went in.
No, I didn't do it for the game where Calvert-Lewin scored against Palace, coincidentally, to keep Everton in the Premier League that season. So,
is that the closest you've ever come to, you'd say, to breaking that press box etiquette?
The only time, I'm giving the game away a little bit here, but the only time when I have flinched was when Yerry Mina scored against Wolves.
Okay.
I think that was 99th minute, there or thereabouts, and I suppose entirely unexpected, a massive point for Everton in the circumstances. So I flinched. I was not the only one in the press box that flinched that day. And I think I've told this story before, but some of the reactions from kind of partisan Everton media, so I mean club staff here, elicited a pretty ferocious and angry response from Wolves supporters in the main stand close to the press box. Nothing of that nature here. Obviously, everybody around us wanted Everton to win on Sunday, really. I think it was better for me because I would say at half-time, I'd have given Everton probably about a 5% chance. It's entirely unscientific, but I'd have given Everton probably about a 5% chance of coming back to actually win the game. I mean, there's that remarkable stat. You've probably seen it already. That remarkable stat afterwards that Everton have only come from behind 3 times from 1 goal behind 3 times in 31 home Premier League matches. And all 3 of those have been against Crystal Palace. So I said to somebody yesterday that probably says more about Palace than it does Everton, given the nature of the statistic. But it was so one-sided, and there was such a gulf in quality between the 2 teams in the first half that I really did not hold out much hope for Everton after the break. And again, they improved from 45 to kind of 60. There are still some really big chances for Palace arguably to put the game even in that period. What you did get, and maybe you experienced this a bit more than me, being where you were in the ground, but what you did get was a definite shift in momentum. Around the time the referee gave that free kick with Yeremy Pino, he got booked. Moyes got booked for his protestations. I think the Everton player was James Garner, got booked as well. Sometimes the crowd, it had been quiet up to that point because of the way Palace had played. Sometimes the crowd needs, as we know, needs a sense of injustice, a moment to lift. And that seemed like a tipping point. The other obviously is the penalty, which sort of comes out of nowhere. I have to be honest, normally my instinct with Everton is to think, how badly could this end? What's going to happen here to completely kill the momentum here? Is this going to finish 2-1 to Palace, late counter-attack? But for the first time in a while, I actually felt the momentum was with Everton to such an extent with the crowd up that they were the more likely winner. Moyes said afterwards in his press conference that he'd kind of been waiting for a moment like this, expecting a moment like this to happen against Aston Villa or West Ham. To be honest, I hadn't in those games. I kind of wondered whether they'd be done at the other end. But here it did feel as though the momentum was very much on Everton's side, and they finally capitalised. It's a really odd goal, but I think they get what they deserve for, more than anything, Iliman and Dyer's work down that right-hand side.
Yeah, it's such a weird goal. And like at the time, being in the ground, like I remember thinking it was weird, and I didn't really quite know what had happened until I watched it back. But I vividly remember when Beto had that header saved. Like, obviously, he didn't have time to think this through, as I don't want to be saying it, but I remember vividly thinking in the split second between him missing that chance and Grealish scoring, like, that was our chance. The moment's gone. We're going to be talking about that all week. Like, it all kind of just popped into my head at that time. And then, obviously, the next thing, you do your big exhale of breath. It's like, oh, God, we've missed that chance to win the game. Like, how great a moment that would have been. And then it's like, oh, it's it. like all that kind of went through my head in like a very, very short amount of time. But then you watch it back, and it's like it's just like half a second, and it's like when a striker goes for on goal or is about to have a shot, isn't it? And you have that thought process of like, he's going to score, I fancy to score, or he's going to miss. And it was a little bit like that. And you know, having watched it back so many times since, it's really funny that Grealish is actually sort of copies Beto, doesn't he, before he goes to the head. So Beto obviously heads it, but Grealish behind him like leaps a little bit as well.
Have you seen Ndye's reaction?
Yeah, double take.
So he thinks the chance is gone as well. Yeah. He stood up a great cross into the middle. Beto should score, and I think the reaction from most people was, how has he not? Moyes certainly said that afterwards. He said he really felt Beto should have scored. Was a good save. I have to give Henderson credit, but I felt Beto directed the header in the only place that Henderson realistically could get to. If he'd gone either side, it was a near certain goal. So everyone goes through in that split second. In Dyer, you see him. He looks a little bit crestfallen. It's almost like the big chance is gone here. Then it's surprise. It's like a split second later, the ball's on the roof of the net, and nobody kind of knows in that instinct what exactly has happened. But I love games like this from a journalistic perspective, because from that point on, and probably at full time, you almost don't know where to turn. There's so much going on inside the stadium with celebrations, with, I think Grealish at one point immediately slumps to the turf just out of sheer exhaustion. You have players close to the touchline. There's 3 or 4 Everton players in a group hug. You have Moyes at one point over to the south stand. You had Grealish blowing kisses at the south stand. all this stuff's kind of going on at the same time. You've got Spirit of the Blues, people dancing to that. You've got uh, Never Felt More Like singing the blues. That goes on as well. Obviously, because of
Fair play,
Liverpool.
by the way, to the person who had the presence of mind in amongst all that chaos to
Yeah.
think, oh yeah, we've got to put this on as well. Like my head had gone by that point. It was sort of
Well,
like,
it is
oh yeah,
chaos. It is
that is.
chaos, and journalistically, my head kind of goes, and then very, very quickly, I think, well, I've got a piece to write here, and like for us on a Sunday, I think we're given 2 hours after full time to write. Bear in mind, we don't write during the game; we write afterwards. So you've got 2 hours to write the piece, and that includes being in press conferences, going to the mix zone, whatever you want to do. And your head's kind of swirling. You're like, I've got to try and make sense of all this now. And thankfully, I think there was kind of an overarching narrative from the game on Sunday, which was first 45 to 60, tactically muddled. Quite clear that the way that Moyes had tried to rejig the attack in the absence of Dewsbury Hall did not work against these opponents. That's not to say it couldn't work against others, but I felt as though when Dye playing as a 10 almost gave Wharton in particular, the game's outstanding player, too much space. And they just look so confused in that opening spell. But the story becomes the change, I guess, from 60 through to full time and what it means, the sense of occasion and everything there. And I think we really have to praise, even though the setup was wrong in the first place, I think you have to praise the in-game adaptation. You have to praise the adjustments that are made, the halftime changes. I thought Everton came out much more aggressive in the way they were looking to play. Alcaraz sort of personified that for me, racing around, trying to win the ball. A game that kind of suits him. I think he suits the chaotic environment. He almost kind of makes sense better than other players of that chaotic environment. And they went from being kind of quite static and laboured in the possession play, I think, to just having runners all over the pitch. And if anything killed Crystal Palace, it was they played in Poland on Thursday night, looked a bit leggy, and then you've got Alcaraz and Timmy Rabunum, two great athletes, running through the centre of the pitch late on. Iliman and Dye taking people on late on. So it's rare we see Everton come back to win any game of football, and obviously that's a cause for celebration. But I think the nature of the win with fringe players stepping up will be something that Moyes is particularly pleased about.
Yeah, I suppose it's not that rare against Palace, is it? Like we are their Bournemouth, aren't we? I was just thinking about it. Like they must like look at us or playing at Goodison or Sellers Park, like, oh god, not these again.
Can I just say, right, and this is a bit moany by me, like, whereas we go to Bournemouth and it's an absolute trek. It's not quite as it's further than Liverpool to Palace and back. But it's an absolute trek in the middle of nowhere. And also the setup feels like it's kind of like this League Two ground. Like it's a smaller ground than Tranmere Rovers on the Wirral. And it feels that way. And you come away from it. The weather's always terrible when Everton go to Bournemouth. It's always kind of blowing a gale and whatever else. Maybe Palace fans feel the same now about Everton, but I just feel like Bournemouth is kind of like the last place I ever want to go. And I include like Ipswich and Norwich in that. Maybe Palace fans feel the same.
Yeah, if you have a bogey team where you go and lose in heartbreaking circumstances, you want it to at least be a bit close to home, I suppose, don't you?
At least they came to a nice stadium.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I mean, they did the whole you sold your soul for this shithole that every single team's done since they come.
But do you not feel that's in part? I mean, some people will think that, but to me, that's almost performative. It's a bit kind of ironic at times.
Definitely, yeah. Like
even the West Ham fans were singing that on Monday.
It's a bit like how the Reds sing, "We've got no money, but we're going to win the title," sort of thing. It's one of those. But just to finish off like that moment when we talk about the subs in a bit more detail. Like, I think I was sort of sat there on Monday at times late on and like watching people stream out, and I kind of get it because so last Monday this is because like people probably been anxious about getting home after the first proper night game. Cold team weren't playing particularly well. I was a bit like, there's a lot of people getting off here, and like I didn't really feel like we had like that momentum to try, and everyone was bought into trying to win the game.
Yeah.
And listen, I've gone off early loads in my time, so I'm not criticising anyone for doing that,
Yeah.
but it just kind of felt like the game fizzled out a little bit. I was worried, is that going to be just a thing that happens at this new ground now? So if I had to have that kind of dispelled, like so emphatically, with two relatively one late goal and one really late goal to sort of turn that around, I think that's really important actually, because people will remember that and will stick it out to the end and have belief. And I think one of the things that was really important about Moyes during his first spell at Everton was that team did come on strong in games a lot, and we've got a lot of late goals, particularly at home, to win games. So to kind of have that belief instilled and have that moment so early on as kind of a reference point for everyone to think, do you know what? Sandals might be a nightmare, but I'm going to stick around and get behind the team. You know, it might be. I'll stay afterwards and have a pint instead because I want to see the.
Imagine how gutted you'd be if you left. And I'm sure there'll be people listening to this. It's not a dig, but I'm sure there'll be people listening to this who did leave Sunday's game early and will now deeply regret it. It kind of will make. I think it does make people think twice about it. I mean, I've always said it'd be akin to like leaving a film a little bit early. I mean, like imagine leaving Usual Suspects 5 minutes before the end, and you miss the kind of the great reveal there, the great plot twist. You miss out on something. And I think the stadium has needed a moment like that. It's needed that thing where everyone's rallying, pulling in one direction, and then there's a culmination right at the end of the game, which kind of blows everything up. And that was what happened on Sunday. It's kind of a pleasure to be in that kind of environment. It's one that we all then buzz about and buzz off for the kind of the next week, and then that in turn I think feeds the kind of the anticipation ahead of the next one, doesn't it? And let's be honest, like I think we'd all had our anxieties around and our concerns around moving to the new stadium, as good as it quite clearly is. And one of those would have been like, what's the home record going to be like at this place? Because history does tell us that when sides move to a new ground, quite often, for the first couple of seasons at the very least, there is a drop off in performance. With Everton, it's worth pointing out that actually Goodison, for the last few seasons, has not been a fortress. Everton have been really poor at home. But then what's happened since Everton started, they've won a couple, they've drawn a couple, they're undefeated there, and that all adds to this sense of feeling at home, which is really important early doors, more than probably at any other point in the history, the nascent history of this stadium. So it felt like a big win for Everton in a number of senses. You got the win on the pitch, but you've also got the win in terms of what it does to the atmosphere around the place.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when a goal's as mad and chaotic as that, you get all these little snippets, don't you, of the different angles and different reactions. Like, you mentioned the Jai there, his reaction was great. Alcaraz was brilliant as well, doesn't he? Yeah. He's a great celebrator, Alcaraz. I think he's often peels off, doesn't he? He just goes off on his own and gets involved with the fans. But
he's very Everton, Alcaraz, in the way that I think that Richarlison was as a South American, in the sense that he really seems to kind of buy in and almost kind of harness the energy from the fans, bring it onto the pitch, and he plays with that kind of passion and emotion. I think people respond to him as a result. I mean, he's not a finished article by any means. Still young, still I think developing as a player. He can be scruffy and untidy in this play at times, but that sheer force of will, that sheer kind of desire to almost embody what the fans are doing in the stands, I think goes down really well. If anyone's not seen it, by the way, even if you don't subscribe to The Athletic, the top image on my match piece from Sunday, where there's 4 lads, including Alcaraz and Grealish, all celebrating, that's worth just going and looking at, even if you can't see anything beyond the rest of the article.
They're all like going in different directions, aren't they? Like, it's like north, south, east, west, isn't it? Like everyone's just off doing their own thing. But
also, so Ndiaye is in that south corner, close to where he's crossed the ball. Grealish, if you listen to him speaking after the game, he talks about heading over to where his family were in the East End. I believe quite a lot of the players' families and wives and kids were West Stand, basically in line with the penalty, close to the edge of the South Stand, low down. So some of the Everton players were over there, of course. Don't know if you've seen, but Jordan Pickford races over and is celebrating like mad. And then after the game, you've got Idrissa Gueye and Di, as they usually do after a win, singing along to Spirit of the Blues and Forever Everton and that kind of stuff. It felt like a big party at the end of the game on Sunday, and kind of a reminder that football should actually be fun sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very, very fun in that regard. We've sort of touched upon, so our second point today is going to be about the changes at half time. We've kind of touched upon Alcaraz a little bit. And, at half time, Paddy, I was saying to Chris and Mo sort of about like how poor we were. And it kind of felt like we need like a couple of disruptors on. Like you mentioned Alcaraz there, because no, it was very safe, wasn't it, into Dibling all the time on the right wing. It was, Thierno didn't get into the game at all against their three centre halves, and Jai wasn't in the game, playing as a 10. And it just felt like we had to do something, be it change our own system or get lads who were just willing to run and put themselves about a little bit more and try and clatter through their decent structure. And it worked, didn't it, with Alcaraz and Beto to start off with. And I was probably about 3 minutes late getting up to my seat again after half time. My dad said, "We've had 2 chances already. We look much better straight away."
Yeah.
And I think Alcaraz and Beto, while you've clearly got limitations, like they just feel like against a team like that who are very polished in the system and positioning, know where they all need to be. I think sometimes just having that kind of player who's willing to run, player who's willing to put themselves about, who's a little bit more raw, can really help. And then obviously you kind of had those two as the initial injection of impetus, and then I think Irabunam really carried it on even more. He came on
very
as well.
good.
And I think you made a point there about the obviously the game they had on Thursday, and it sort of felt like with every change we made, like those two at half time, obviously physically in terms of power and speed and energy, are a massive upgrade on the lads that they replaced. And then I think actually when James Garner went to right back, and you've got Irabunam's legs in midfield again, he's a bit more of a dynamic player who can get around a bit more than James Garner. It just felt like that extra bit of physicality and ability to carry the ball at a point in the game where they're probably thinking, bloody hell, we're knackered here. Yeah. I don't know, we didn't outplay them in that stage. It just kind of felt like Everton just started to run over them a little bit in midfield, certainly, and out wide.
I was about to say it felt like physically, athletically, Everton came into their own in that final 30 minutes or so. I mean, let's say it's probably 42-ish if you include the additional time, which was a little bit of a farce again for my money. I think in the Premier League, like at the very, very top level, you've got really skilled technical operators, and they can pick apart even the best kind of deep-lying, well-organised defence. Everton don't have loads of players capable of that. They've got maybe a couple, and one of them was suspended in Dewsbury Hall. But what happens then is if you've only got one or two, you've only got Grealish, for example, then first of all, there's an over-reliance on him. But then second of all, it becomes a little bit samey, a little bit predictable. And I think what the substitutes did was they weren't able to produce the guile that those top operators can bring. But they brought such physicality and purpose and drive to the team that it almost masked a load of the other flaws. So, I mean, the first goal, I think it's a lofted pass from Mykolenko into the channel. It's a decent lofted pass. I actually think it's aimed at Beto, by the way. But Irabunam is athletic enough and quick enough to anticipate where that ball is going, and he gets on the end of it. For the second goal, it's a piece of ingenuity really from Ndiaye, followed by kind of, I suppose, Grealish. I think he effectively blocks the ball into the net, but opportunism from him, the desire to get on the end of the cross and to block a clearance. So it probably wasn't any great technical skill beyond Ndiaye that won Everton this game. It was all those kind of old-fashioned attributes. It It was the ability to run further, to run quicker, to do more, to the desire to get back into this. I think that's a really good sign. Like we've probably like Irabunum's been hit and miss. Alcaraz has been on the periphery. These are all people Everton will need at some point this season. So having that positive experience, I think, stands them and the rest of the squad in much greater stead.
Yeah, I really like Alcaraz.
I do.
I'm surprised and I'm not surprised by how little he's been used this season. Like I think in that game against Wolves away, he was really hard done by there, being dragged off at half time. Like no one was good, don't get me wrong. But like for McNeil, who I think had a particularly poor night that night, to have stayed on and to bring Alcaraz off, that felt really harsh on him. And I don't know. I wondered if there's a bit of a sense of maybe Moyes didn't quite want him really. I wasn't totally sure on him, and I was trying to make a bit of a point on that because we've got loads of players in those positions now. But there's been times this season when I feel like he could have come on in games. I think getting Jaj probably tired in a few of the home games. Obviously, was great right up to the end of the weekend. But like he just gives you something different there, doesn't he? Like I think if Dewsbury Hall had started on Sunday in the same position as where obviously Njai started playing behind the striker, I kind of think we would have had similar issues because he's like a technical player. Obviously, he's probably a bit more of a midfielder than Njai, would have been defensively a bit better. But it just feels like with Alcaraz sometimes that when the game, you said when he kind of comes into his own, when it's chaotic, and it feels like when it is a bit stretched and there is space, he's probably along with Grealish, probably our best ball carrier in terms of midfield. He's quite good at shooting on, but I mean, the shot he had, which nearly cleared the South Stand roof, was outrageous, wasn't it? I don't know how he did that, but he's not afraid to have a shot from distance either, is he? Like he's just a little bit more raw than I think all those other midfielders who are great to watch and technically can be brilliant and give you great moments, but sometimes you just need a lad who's going to get his head down and run. Like the chance he had, which he hit with his left foot and Henderson saved. Like I love that. Like the head down into the ground and just charge into the box and hit it. Like as much as Dewsbury Hall, Grealish, and Njai have got their attributes, like I feel like none of them would have really done the same thing in that situation.
Yeah, I think there's been an attitude internally with Alcaraz. It's like he'll do, and what I mean by that is like he comes available as an option in January at a time when the club does not really have much money. I know the takeovers just happened, but there's still issues. They're trying to clear the debt. They're still trying to get their feet under the table. Kevin Thelwell's predicament, obviously, his situation is precarious even at that stage. And I think it wasn't necessarily Moyes thinking we really need this lad. It was him or kind of nothing else proposed by Thelwell and his recruitment team. So I think he said yes, but he said yes just because he needed bodies and he thought maybe he'll bring something. And if you look at the way Alcaraz was using last season, he was in and out of the side. There was a bit of uncertainty as to whether the purchase option, which was low for a player of his reputation, I'd argue, bit of uncertainty as to whether that would even be triggered. The obligation there, the option as it became. And I think it was triggered, not because they loved the player, but because at that point they were looking at having to bring in around 10 new players, 10 new faces to pad out this squad. And he'd done an adequate job by their estimation. Later on in the window, of course, they signed 2 or 3 players who can play in his position. So I don't think there was any big show of faith for Alcaraz. And have I been surprised by the fact that he's not started many games this season? I mean, for all those reasons, no. I do think, like you, it was he was maybe unfairly scapegoated in that Wolves match, the cup game, at a time when there were other players on the pitch who were performing worse than him. We have to remember is Everton had a few chances in that first half against Wolves, a couple from long throws, actually, Keane and Tarkovsky. But the big chance from open play actually comes. The best chance from open play comes when Alcaraz drives through the middle and feeds Dibling on the right. I just think he brings that kind of bit of something different that otherwise it can get a little bit samey. In attack, you've got loads of kind of skilled operators, but nobody that really wants to break lines and be aggressive in their running and in their general play. And I think it's a good reminder to Moyes that there's a lad here who can make a difference. I mean, what we've noticed so far this season again is that Moyes is quite late in his substitutions, even at times when things are quite clearly not going to plan. But more or less because of like how bad that first half was, as bad as it maybe could have been, more or less from an Everton perspective, he's forced into something earlier. And maybe it's good for him to see that like Alcaraz can contribute and Beto can come off the bench, and even Irabunum can make an impact in those moments. I think Alcaraz is a good player. I think he's a good player, and I think he will win Everton points this season.
So do I. Like, it's weird to me that Moyes. Listen, like, we don't know this. Really, we don't know this for a fact, but it's weird that Moyes seems to not really fancy him because he does all the things that you'd want a Moyes. You know, you typically want Moyes to be able to do in regards. Sorry, I'll start a bit again. He does all the things that you typically associate with Moyes wanting his footballers to do. Like he's not like a luxury number 10, is he? By any means, like. The best part of his game is his running, his energy, his craft. You know, you mentioned there about his attitude there seemed spot on. Like obviously we don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but he doesn't seem the sort of lad who like just phone it in training, does he? Or or that kind of thing. Like I don't know. Maybe there's just something there he's not quite sure on. Like I'm not sitting here saying he should be starting every game for us, but certainly as someone who can come on and inject a bit of energy into the team, who can offer a bit of a goal threat, can shoot from distance, like. I think we should be looking at using him a little bit more. And like
useful. Yeah,
really
useful squad player, if nothing else.
Really useful player. So yeah, hopefully that means you'll get a few more minutes after that really good sort of appearance at the weekend. I suppose on the flip side of that, Paddy, we should probably talk about the lads next to who made way at half time. Obviously, big chances for Thierno Barry and the Tyler Dibling, who was making his first start in the Premier League for Everton. Both struggled, didn't they? Like, no sugarcoating it, is there really? Like, Dibling had that one run down the right, didn't he? Which you could have maybe found a pass a little bit better and didn't. And I think Barry, like, the moment I knew he was coming off was when he squared up Gay with so much space to run into. And I think for a striker like him, he's all a lot about running. Like, look at this time at Villarreal, he scored quite a few goals like that. Space to run into. He just seemed to have no confidence, or being up against a very handy defender in Gay. But it was just so easy for him to step across, wasn't it? Gay, and just take the ball off him. And not saying Beto necessarily would have done better in that situation, but I think he would have made it more of a fist of it, certainly.
Yeah,
it's brutal for them, isn't it, for young players to be handed a chance like that? And I think most Evertonians would say that they need patience and they need time to develop. But I suppose the manager in that situation, with the international break looming, with the performance that was being, we've seen in front of his very eyes there, he had to make changes, and ultimately he was vindicated. But must have been bittersweet for both of those lads, really, to see the team come back and win, but having, for want of a better phrase, stunk the gap out themselves in the first half.
Yeah, I mean that Barry Mark Gahey moment was a little bit like those videos the club sometimes puts out of I think they call them academy days, and you get loads of kids from the academy playing. There's like 20, 30 of them on a pitch for, you say, like Tarkovsky and Jake O'Brien, and you see the kind of the physical disparity. And at some point, one of the kids tries to take it round Tarkovsky, and he just takes the ball off them. It kind of felt like that, but on a Premier League level with Barry and Gahey in that moment. I mean, it was quite clear that things were not going Everton's way, and there was a frustration with the overall performance inside the stadium. But I think what that became at times then, because Barry had a few poor touches and lost the ball, I think those groans started to become more and more audible, become louder and louder. And I don't think, if we're being honest, I don't think that helps the player massively in those moments. I understand the frustrations, because I think everybody was frustrated with how they were going. The player himself will have been. He just looks like somebody who's low on confidence. And yeah, sure, he needs patience, and I'm sure he will have better days for Everton. But this was one of the games so far. In most of the others, there's been something. Like, particularly early doors against Brighton, I remember thinking, "All right, well, he's not scored and he's not really looked like scoring here." But I can kind of see there were some nice kind of flicks to teammates. He had a role in both goals. But it feels like in recent weeks that the Wolves cameo where he gets hauled off after 45 minutes shows a bit of frustration towards the end of the half and gets booked. And then this one, it's kind of been a law of diminishing returns. He's done less and less. And I didn't really see anything in the first half performance against Palace on Sunday that particularly excited me or made me think this lad deserves a run in the side now. If anything, I'd probably go the other way. I'd skew the other way and say it was probably a reminder that he does really need time and need patience. And maybe it does just have to be Beto for the next few weeks or the next few months, how long it takes. I don't think either of the two of them have made a compelling case. I just think Beto was more proactive. He was more aggressive. He ran in behind better. Some of this will be the fact that teammates, Everton were playing a different way and on the front foot more. And there's a kind of a chicken and egg scenario there. But I don't think Barry did enough. Dibling as well, just a little bit lightweight, knocked off the ball on the periphery of the game. And as I mentioned in my match piece, like I don't think we should get it. We're still very early doors here. You should never write players off. And I certainly won't. But it was quite telling that over £60 million worth of summer additions, with Everton 1-0 behind in the game, were taken off. But I mean this in the best possible way. Yesterday's men in Barry and Beto and Alcaraz, sorry, players who've been at the club for a while. Kind of felt like a reversion to the old Everton where it was a bit more direct and whatever else. And I think ultimately that helped. So it's a really fine line, and I'm not even sure exactly where it is. But with these players, Dibling, Barry, really fine line between giving them opportunities and allowing them to develop, but also killing confidence a little bit. And in taking them off, does that then feed that process and make them less confident still? Or does it even save them from something that spirals out of control even more? I'm not entirely sure, but certainly it's not an ideal situation.
Yeah, I think in regards to the striker, yeah, Sunday for me probably underline the fact that Beto should probably start for the next few weeks, and that's not because he's playing amazing. It's
No.
just that Barry just looks very, very much like sort of what he is, like a young player coming into a new league who's trying to get to grips with it. And I know there's a big price tag there, and people will expect a little bit more from him because of that. But it's pretty brutal. Like I was really surprised he played him yesterday, to be honest, because
Yeah.
I kind of thought that whichever one of them played, it would be tough. But I just thought against the three-man defence, against three-man defence is very physical and dynamic. That Lacroix, Richards, and Gay can all run, can't they? They can all put themselves about. Like that didn't feel like a good matchup for either of them, but certainly not for Barry and the way in which he wants to play. Like you could see with Better that just he was more comfortable just sort of being in the battle and run the lines and trying to muscle them off. Whereas Barry at the moment is just he's tall, isn't he? But he's still quite wiry because he's got a lot of filling out to do still. Like it just felt like not a good matchup for him in that regard. So I think not based on necessarily either of them seizing the share. Like it feels like after that, and obviously Moyes again changing at our time, like Beto is probably going to be the man for a while. Although I did think it was quite. I watched the press conference Moyes did afterwards, and I watched a couple of the other interviews he did as well, just see if there's any like different bits and pieces we could pick up on and talk about. And in every single one, unprompted, Moyes says Beto should have scored. Like he didn't need any kind of like. It wasn't like the interviewer was going, "Well, David, was that a great header and a great save or a bad miss?" Like he went out of his way to bring it up himself, didn't he? And they had a bit of a laugh and joke on the pitch afterwards, the two of them, didn't they? So I don't know if Moyes gave a bit of stick about missing it, but a situation he's still clearly not happy with, but it feels like yesterday might have given us a bit of clarity for the short term at least.
Yeah, I'm always conscious that in some of those games, particularly against tough opponents, it may well be easier for the player that comes off the bench to make a bit more of an impression. You're against tired legs, you yourself come on and you're energetic. So that should give you a bit of an advantage. And I do feel as though we've kind of been locked in this cycle with Everton this season where there's been no undisputed number 9 to start. Nobody that's made that really compelling case to be a regular starter. But what's happened is one of the 2 starts, they flattered to deceive. The replacement comes on, has a good cameo. Off the back of that, earns a place in the starting lineup for the next game. And then the same thing happens, but in reverse, with the other one impressing off the bench. Locked in that cycle. I know that was Moyes' intention, was to kind of use the 2 of them interchangeably, and that there maybe wouldn't be a nailed on starter. But I do wonder if the team would just benefit from a bit of continuity now. Just somebody, if it is Beto, then it is Beto for the next 5 or 6 games, with Barry coming off the bench on 60 and showing what he can do. Certainly, it feels as though Beto's maybe edged ahead a little bit in that particular battle. I mean, it's a shame. You would expect to see more from Dibling. I still feel as though we've really not seen much of Dibling, and there have been some positive things too. But I go back to when I watched him at Southampton, and what really struck me about him when he played Everton or others was the sheer fearlessness of his game. He's not lightning quick without the ball, but he used to just waltz past runners. He used to, and he kind of strong and would hold them off as well. But eh, everything so far has felt a bit timid, a bit tentative, and that to me is a player who, yes, is feeling his way into things, but is probably also shy of confidence as well. So, but like I say, it's a really delicate balance trying to keep them on the right level at an even keel without destroying the confidence, but then also giving them opportunities without hurting the team. Ultimately, Moyes has a duty of care to them, but his main priority is always going to be winning games for Everton, and he did the job in that regard on Sunday. That got kind of the main task ticked off there, really.
Yeah, and it's like a vicious circle, isn't it? Like one thing leads on to the other, because if Everton are in a better position in the table, and there's no worry about where we're going to finish or anything like that, then you will take a bit more risk maybe and give those lads more chances if he feels like they can come on later in the game. Whereas if that pressure's on you to, like, you've got to get results, otherwise you're going to be looking over your shoulder, then I think you are more prone to go with your senior players in that regard. So I
But
think
this is why I feel the Carabao Cup, the early exit in the Carabao Cup, was a bit of a blow. Not just beyond another year potentially without a trophy, and that being a decent opportunity for Everton to progress, but it would have given some of those lads an opportunity to play competitive games at a good level without harming Everton's prospects in the league. I don't think, and we've discussed this on previous shows, I don't think Moyes should have made 7 changes at Molineux, but he could have made 2 or 3 or 4, given, say, Barry and Dibling a proper go with quality around them. Dewsbury Hall, Grealish and Dye, players of that nature. And I think you'd have probably seen a better showing from them. And then had Everton progressed, then they'd have had another opportunity against decent opposition to play. It just feels now like they have to play in the Premier League or nothing until December, January. And then Everton are going to be in a position where 2 of their best players go away to AFCON. So you kind of need to make sure everybody's ticking over still. It's not easy to manage when you've got so many options now, particularly behind the striker.
yeah, I suppose it's sort of like flip that the other way. It's good that we have got options in one sense there, because I think
Yeah.
in previous summers, if Everton had signed a striker for 30 million and a winger for 40 million, they would be starting every single game, and there'll be a lot of pressure on them, even if they weren't ready. So it's quite good in a way that we've had a look at both of them. They've both shown good bits here and there, but look like they're going to be bench players for now, and like that's fine. Like there are players who are more established who are contributing more at the moment, and
It's also Moyes' way. I mean,
yeah,
think back to Leighton Baines as a really good example. He didn't come into the side immediately. Phil Jagielka didn't play in his central defensive position initially. I remember him at right back in defensive midfield. Baines was behind Joleon Lescott at left back for a while. And I think Moyes said in the build up to Sunday's game that this is his usual plan with players. They don't always come in. He does have faith in Dibling and Barry, and obviously had to sign off on the signings over the summer. But nobody comes in straight away unless they are 100% ready. He kind of eases them in over time, and that's a general rule. The exceptions are when players are as good as Grealish or Dewsbury Hall, and I think you know what you're going to get at Premier League level. So I think it will take a bit of time for those two. I'm hoping we see them again and that we see better versions of themselves. But it didn't feel like Sunday really advanced either's case, particularly not Barry's, I would argue.
Yeah, tough day for both of them, but listen, the young players, it's going to take time.
Yeah.
As long as the team's winning, that's all we can be all we can be pleased about. So, we will wrap it up there this week, Paddy. Cheers everybody for watching or listening. If you're on YouTube, do hit like, do hit subscribe, do leave us a comment. If you are listening or watching on Spotify, you can leave us a rating or review there. Same goes on iTunes. If you've got questions you want us to get stuck into about anything regarding Everton at the moment over the international break, evertonbyline@gmail.com. And our final round, we are sponsored by the Bridewell, one of our favourite pubs in Liverpool. So if you're out and about in Liverpool over the international break, do pop in. Always a great place to go and have a pint. We'll wrap it up there anyway. Do check out Blue Monday if you're not already. That was Roger Armstrong making his return. I know Paddy was delighted about that. We all love Rog, don't we?
Yep. Yeah, good to see him back.
Good to see him back on. And also we had the instant reaction from outside the Denby on Sunday as well. Myself, Mark Mersey, Keith Tomlin and Rob Fisher. So loads of content in the aftermath of that game on Sunday, and loads coming up over the next 2 weeks to keep satisfied as well. So cheers for tuning in. Up the toffees. Catch you again soon.